This is Bob. Bob is about to realize that he could technically become a king by tomorrow morning. No, I'm not joking. Right now, in the real world, wars are raging over every single inch of land. Look at Israel. Look at Ukraine. Look at Taiwan. Everywhere you look, there is blood, there is politics, and there is massive tension. Governments act like every square meter is worth a fortune. But now, imagine a place the size of an entire country where there isn't a single soldier, not a single law, and not a single tax collector. This is Bir Tawil, a place that literally nobody wants. It's officially called Terra Nullius, nobody's land. And the craziest part? Two countries, Egypt and Sudan, are literally begging each other to take this piece of land. But they are both terrified to do it. Why? Because if you claim it, you lose everything. How did we end up here? Right now, I'm going to explain why the world map is the stupidest, most broken document in human history. Back in 1899, the British Empire was playing God with a ruler and a pencil. They decided to draw a border between Egypt and Sudan. A British official just took a ruler, slapped it down on the map, and drew a perfectly straight line across the 22nd parallel. It was quick, clean, and completely ignored thousands of years of human history, tribal migration, and local traditions underneath. But 3 years later, in 1902, the British realized they had made a catastrophic error. That perfectly straight line sliced right through local nomadic tribes. One tribe, the Ababda, was suddenly stuck in Sudan while their grazing lands were in Egypt. Another group, the Halaib, was split in half, leaving them without their traditional trade routes. The British scrambled to fix it and drew a second border. This one was a curvy, jagged mess designed to keep the tribes together. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is where they planted the seeds of a permanent geopolitical nightmare that is still haunting us today. Here is the trap. We now have two contradictory borders. One is political, the straight line of 1899, and the other is administrative, the jagged line of 1902. And between these two lines, there are two distinct pieces of land. One is the Halaib Triangle, which is massive, beautiful, and rich in natural resources with a coastline on the Red Sea. The other is Bir Tawil, which is nothing but scorching sand, rocks, and extreme heat. Now, here comes the hilarious part. Egypt claims the straight line of 1899 because, under that map, the rich Halaib Triangle belongs to them. But if Egypt claims that line, they have to abandon Bir Tawil. Sudan, on the other hand, claims the jagged line of 1902 because, under that map, the rich Halaib Triangle belongs to them. But if Sudan claims that line, they have to abandon Bir Tawil. It is a legal Mexican standoff where both sides are desperately terrified of claiming the wrong piece of land. If Egypt says Bir Tawil is ours, they basically sign away their rights to the billions of dollars in resources in the Halaib Triangle. So, both nations refuse to acknowledge the existence of Bir Tawil. They pretend it doesn't exist. It is the only place on Earth where being ignored is an official government strategy. But nature and human ego abhors a vacuum. If a land is technically unclaimed, it attracts the absolute craziest people on the planet. Enter Jeremiah Heaton, a regular father from the United States. In 2014, he traveled all the way to this desert, planted a homemade flag, and declared himself the king of Bir Tawil. Why? Because he wanted his 7-year-old daughter to be a real princess. He spent months lobbying the UN, asking for diplomatic recognition for his desert kingdom, even trying to get local African leaders to sign treaties with him. The UN essentially told him to go home and stop playing with maps. But he wasn't the only one. A few years later, a Russian businessman named Dmitry Zikarev arrived, ripped Heaton's flag out of the sand, planted his own, and renamed the area the Kingdom of Middle-earth. He claimed he was the rightful sovereign of the dunes, and even started a blog documenting his reign. Then, a student from India showed up, planted his own flag, and started an online campaign selling citizenship to this patch of desert. They were all playing a high-stakes game of pretend, ignoring the fact that the king of the desert is still just a guy with a heatstroke and a flag, with no power, no army, and no actual territory. But here is the even crazier part. What if I told you that Bir Tawil is actually part of a much larger, global epidemic of ghost territories? You see, this isn't an isolated accident. There are dozens of micro-borders all over the planet that make absolutely no sense, from islands that change citizenship every 6 months to houses that are literally split in half by international lines. We have created a global legal system that is supposed to be precise, but it's actually a house of cards held together by outdated treaties and bureaucratic laziness. Every time a government ignores an anomaly like Bir Tawil, they are admitting that the system is failing. They are admitting that the map is just a suggestion, and that the only thing that actually matters in this world is who has the biggest gun and the loudest voice. We've turned geography into a joke, and we're all paying the price for the punchline. The reality, however, is far less funny. Bir Tawil isn't a fun playground for tourists or kings. It's an absolute death trap, with temperatures frequently hitting 45 degrees Celsius, no water, and no infrastructure. You wouldn't last a day without serious gear. The only people who actually spend time in Bir Tawil are nomadic gold prospectors and smugglers, and they are usually carrying automatic weapons. They don't care about the British lines from 1902, and they certainly don't care about some guy from Virginia who planted a flag to impress his daughter. To them, this isn't a legal anomaly, it's just a place to hide and work. They know that this land is the blind spot of two nations, and they use that emptiness to stay off the radar. And it gets scarier. What happens when these forgotten lands suddenly become valuable? Let's say someone discovers massive lithium deposits or a hidden aquifer under the sands of Bir Tawil tomorrow. The moment that happens, all of those legal agreements and historical borders will instantly be thrown into the trash. The same two countries that currently refuse to claim the land will suddenly find 1,000 reasons why it was theirs all along. They'll deploy armies, they'll break treaties, and they'll rewrite history books in a single afternoon. That's the true face of the world we live in. It's not governed by law, it's governed by profit. The Terra Nullius status isn't a permanent condition, it's just a temporary waiting room for the next conflict. We are sitting on a geopolitical powder keg, and we're too distracted by our own daily lives to notice that the map is being redrawn, one mistake at a time. This entire story is a perfect monument to human arrogance. We took a ruler, drew lines on a map, and convinced ourselves that the earth had to obey our paper boundaries. We've turned millions of hectares of land into a legal void simply because two countries are too stubborn to compromise. Bir Tawil is proof that our modern geopolitical world isn't built on logic, fairness, or human needs, it's built on the ego of colonial bureaucrats who didn't know what they were doing 100 years ago. We are still living in the wreckage of their incompetence. The reason why this place is so fascinating is that it shows us exactly how fragile our concepts of sovereignty really are. If a government doesn't put a soldier there, does the land really belong to them? If a country ignores a territory long enough, does it simply cease to exist in the eyes of the law? We are creating a world where borders are becoming more rigid, yet the reality behind them is becoming more chaotic. If you want to understand why our physical world is falling apart at the seams, hit subscribe. We are only just beginning to peel back the layers of this global scheme. Every time you look at a map, remember that the lines you see aren't natural. They are scars left by people who never intended to live with the consequences of what they were creating. Bir Tawil is just the most visible scar of them all. A constant reminder that the world map is not a record of truth, it's a record of mistakes. And the worst part? We aren't learning. We are still making the same mistakes, with the same arrogance, in every corner of the globe. The only difference is, we now have better technology to hide our errors. But physics and geography don't care about your technology, your digital borders, or your claims. They just exist, waiting for us to stop pretending and face the mess we've made. We're only at the beginning of this journey. The map is a lie, and we're going to prove it. Hit subscribe.